Welcome to Vintage Video, In the Water. I'm David Mossner. In this episode we explore water, the creatures who live in it, the people who live by it, and its value economically, socially, and psychologically. We start with a celebration in a town on the Missouri River, which celebrates the birth of America with a parade on its watery Main Street. Then we travel upstream from Chamberlain to a beach near Mobridge, where boaters are looking to enjoy a water holiday of their own. Small planes and big pancakes with sausages started the festivities on a Big Thrill, Big Meal path. It's the second annual Aqua Holidays. The first was held 14 years ago. The theme is to get to Chamberlain by land, air, and sea. So it's fitting that parade marshals Norm and Grace Hilson and Jean and Lorraine Flaws led the 19-boat parade.
I think it's just tradition. Our families always celebrate the 4th of July.
And that tradition is sizzling downtown.
It's the only way to celebrate the 4th. It's great.
With boats and burgers already included in the recipe, what other ingredient could possibly go better with the 4th of July weekend than baseball?
Try to have it on the alumni weekend for people that have left Chamberlain and come back to town, something for them to come back to, other than just seeing the town, have something else for them to do while they're here, and their families.
Aqua Holidays continues tomorrow. It wraps up on Monday evening with the fireworks display. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Chamberlain. Downriver from Mobridge, near the Oahe Dam, the focus of boaters is salmon. The fish were biting at the time of this story because the 1988 drought meant less water for the fish to hide in. That made anglers happy and hopeful for the next year when the young fish would be a year longer and a year bigger.
The salmon are biting on Lake Oahe, but the best place to catch them isn't limited to the merry-go-round around the intakes of Oahe Dam. Salmon can be found as far north as Sully Flats from 85 feet and deeper. A big change from last year is the size of the fish.
Sizes are way down from where we were last year. This time of the year we were probably hitting the all 12 to 14 pound size fish quite a bit. This year we're more down into a maximum of 8 to 10 pounds.
Oahe salmon have been caught at weights of 20 pounds or more, so the lighter catches are confusing.
What we've had is a really good take on last year's stocking. And when that happens, you'll have a lot of young individuals in the system. But we haven't seen any evidence of slow growth rates or anything, or any problems with the forage base. So right now we're very pleased with what's happening. What it means is next year is going to be extremely good for the 5 to 6 pound fish plus, and the year after that they'll even be larger.
During the last 2 weeks, more big fish are getting caught. Telsma says the best bait, either a dodger or flasher with a squid. And because Lake Oahe is lower than usual, it's helped the fishing, but Telsma warns boaters to be careful because of sandbars at or near the surface. Good news for salmon anglers that don't have downriggers. Some are being caught in the Oahe Dam tail race in the evening.
Another silver lining of the 1988 drought was for endangered shorebirds like the least tern and piping plover. I hopped in a small boat with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Rangers for a fast ride on the Missouri to find the birds.
The least tern flies in fewer places than it used to, but the endangered species is still nesting on the beaches of the Missouri and Cheyenne rivers, beaches that are frequently stops for boaters who like to play volleyball there. The least tern and the piping plover, which is a protected bird because of dwindling numbers, will be nesting through mid-August on the sandy beaches.
We're asking people just to be aware that the birds are out here. They like these sandbars and sandy beaches. And if you see birds, if you would just try to move to another part of the beach or another island if possible, because the birds are very susceptible to disturbance.
The sandy beaches available this year because of low water levels are exactly what the piping plovers and least terns are looking for. But over the years, those beaches have disappeared.
When it used to be a free-flowing river, there were lots of sandbars and changing habitat, and there was more sandbar habitat available. Now that we have the reservoirs, there isn't as much habitat available, so a lot of the numbers have gone down.
Mick Phillips says the piping plovers and least terns population has leveled off, but each nest is very important in ensuring the nearly invisible piping plovers and quick-flying least terns stick around the Missouri. Dave Mossner, KELOLAND News, Lake Oahe.
I'm not sure whose idea it was for me to do a story on night fishing, but it's popular with the hardcore anglers determined to go after walleye and other fish when they feed. I found a few guys below the Oahe Dam and pier on a night the wind chill dropped to 20 degrees.
Some people like to stay warm and some people like to fish at night. And you got to be willing to get cold if you're going to fish at night, because you're going to get cold.
Just to get away from town, people and everything. It's kind of relaxing out here.
Just to get away from people, telephones, come out and enjoy yourself, catch a few walleyes.
And there's reasons for being out in the cold, dark night below Oahe Dam.
It's good at night, depends on the weather changes and the water level and what they're pushing through the dam.
Is it better at night than during the day most of the time?
About 95% better. Your night fish, that's your walleye feed, basically.
The minnows don't seem to mind, but even the hardiest of fishermen have limits when it comes to the cold.
On and off in regards to the flow of water and the weather conditions.
What do you do to keep warm?
You see me now.
It varies. The dress varies according to the weather.
Wear nice warm clothes, boots that don't leak, and a good pair of gloves. There ain't much else you can do. You just got to wear good warm clothes.
Now how about the cold though?
That is each individual you got to put up with. It's just climate. You got to, if you want to fish, you're going to stay out here and fish.
Do you come out every night regardless of the weather, or where do you draw the line?
It's going to be drawn pretty quick here. We go out as many times as we can get away with it.
Iowa fisherman Jim Johnson made the trip to Oahe Dam to try night fishing at Oahe.
We go up to northern Minnesota once in a while. Go plugging at night. I like to do it. It's kind of a easy way to fish, actually. If you like standing in the cold or in waders, it's all right. It's quiet. There isn't near as many people. You know, it's a lot more of a challenge to stand out there when you can't see what you're doing. You get away from, you go plug it in lakes where there's no lights, and it can be just black, coal black, and you just gotta kind of feel your way through, and it's a challenge, I suppose.
Casting into the darkness sends the lure and line out of sight, not to return to view until it's only a few feet from shore, in this picture right above the rock. At night the walleye are good size, there aren't any telephones or clocks, but even with all those advantages, some night anglers still wonder about their pastime.
Close to being nuts is the word, especially tonight.
Okay.
It's about 10-15 degrees now, wind chill, so it's getting right down there.
All right, but they, don't put off the much fight. You really get frosted up out here when you do this. Yeah, you sure do. I'd say you'd have to be crazy.
Dave Mossner at the Oahe Dam reporting for 30.
Fishermen and women want to catch big fish, or catch bigger fish. That simple concept in the quest to nurture bigger fish is what led an 8th grade teacher and his students to study bluegills in a small Rock County lake. The next summer, the teacher returned with more students, determined to net bigger fish, and hopefully hook some kids on science.
Most of the bluegills in Gibbs Lake are small, less than 7 inches long and weighing just a couple of ounces.
The biggest problem, of course, is that we want to have nice-sized fish for fishermen. It's overpopulation, in my estimation.
To find out if that's the answer, Vogt and his students are taking out 20,000 bluegills.
I think that there's not enough food in this lake for them.
The theory being tested by these student volunteers and their teacher is an experiment sponsored by the Wisconsin Academy of Science, a program designed to get students, like these 8th graders, involved in science.
It kind of gives me what science actually is in the real world.
After netting the fish, they're released in Lake Koshkonong after being measured and marked.
Okay.
The guess is that the larger lake will result in larger bluegills.
So that next year when they go and stun the fish, that they'll know who stamped them and when it was done.
If their experiment works, researchers hope to take this same idea to other lakes in Wisconsin to help the fish population in those lakes. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Rock County. The mission? Find out why Gibbs Lake's bluegills aren't bigger. Last summer, science teacher Frank Vogt netted 17,000 bluegill. Most weighed just 2 ounces and were only a couple of inches long. They were transferred to a much bigger home, Lake Koshkonong.
By taking a significant number of fish out, I felt that the remaining population should grow within a short time and make better fishing for the people around here.
Already his theory seems to be holding water. The fish caught and measured this year are bigger.
Later on I could come back here with my kids and I'll know that there will be bigger fish in here.
This summer, Vogt and 50 volunteers are catching and marking 10,000 more bluegills. Released in Lake Koshkonong, they should grow quickly, while making even more room for the panfish in Gibbs Lake.
Just the number that we've taken out now will increase the fishing within the next 2 years quite a bit.
Vogt's study is paid for with a 2-year research grant from the Wisconsin Academy of Science.
And part of the project is to try to get some of the students involved and to do some type of research that's good for or will produce something.
His student assistants are volunteers. This is the second summer for David Marsh.
It's educational, and I can use the Mr. Vote for a reference later on in life when I want a job maybe with the DNR.
If so, Teacher Vote may leave more than just a few big fish behind. He could be training the next group of state fish managers. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Gibbs Lake.
Would you believe fishermen found pearls in a shallow creek east of Beloit, Wisconsin? Well, cultured pearls are just one of the uses for the clamshells diggers pulled out of Turtle Creek under state rules at the time. What began as an interesting feature on commercial fishing in a small body of water turned into a much bigger story.
Jim Swan's worked in water, digging for clams most of his life, a trade handed down from his grandfather to his dad and down to him, a tradition he'd like his sons to follow. Swan discovered Turtle Creek's clams 3 years ago, clams he calls the best around. Not good for eating, but in big demand in Japan and Australia.
The thicker ones, they make what they call a microchip out of them for these things. I don't know what they do for sure with them, but then the others, they make cultured pearls.
A half dozen clammers combed the creek bottom last year. This year, 40 diggers are licensed for the shells that bring in up to 85 cents a pound.
Clammers are required to report their harvests. They're required to notify us if they are clamming down in the body of water here, so we can keep track of how many people are here, what the harvest rate is.
The DNR estimates nearly 100,000 pounds of clamshell came out of Turtle Creek last year. Already in April, 92,000 pounds has been taken out. After buying a $30 license, clammers can take as many shells as they want every day from April to September. Local conservationists say that's too much.
Why not close the clamming on Turtle Creek till we find out if it's safe to take out what they do?
The DNR is studying Turtle Creek clamming and its impact. Swan says good clammers throw back some to reproduce, so there will always be a harvest. And he's worried about too many folks trying to cash in here, but says he'll fight attempts to take away the livelihood he earns with Turtle Creek clams. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Turtle Creek.
While many stories point to areas of concern, when those concerns lead to action, it's always good to check back on the results down the road. This next story is from Delavan Lake in Walworth County, Wisconsin. 7 years after it closed to fishing because it was too polluted. In 1992, it celebrated its first fishing season in 7 years.
9 years ago, Delavan Lake was about as bad as a lake can get. Hardly anyone wanted to use it. Kevin McKinnon keeps a piece of tape on his clarity tester to remember how bad it was.
Water clarity had reached a point of about 3 to 4 inches in depth throughout the entire summer. The lake was almost totally unusable for water recreation.
But now, Delavan Lake is brand new. Half of the $5.5 million rebirth was paid for locally. A new reef was built to direct water flow through the lake. To protect the water, a sanitary district was created. Still to come, sediment ponds and wetlands upstream.
100% better. Makes the water a lot more pleasing, you know, when you're swimming in it and it's water skiing and stuff like that. It's definitely a lot better.
Several million muskies, walleyes, northerns, bass, and panfish have been stocked. The lake reopens Saturday.
We should be crowded. We're hoping to be real crowded. I hope to have all the boats running. We only got 10.
The lake's appearance is paying off. Lakeside homes that cost $100,000 5 years ago are selling briskly now for 5 times that. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Delavan Lake.
In the mid-19th century, water power was crucial to generate power and commerce in small towns with hopes of generating their own economic power. That's why the Broadhead mill race was dug around the small town of Broadhead in 1860. Some 130 years later, locals were trying to preserve its legacy.
John Polka loves the mill race running through his backyard. It was created by teams of men and horses in 1860. Finished 3 years later, the water turned stone wheels that ground wheat into flour. Later, an electric generator was installed. The city of Broadhead bought the mill race and power plant in 1915. It shut down 30 years ago, but the race still weaves its way around the Sugar River.
It's a beautiful spot. You go through virgin territory all the way from Broadhead into here.
Polka leads the fight to save mill race. The Department of Natural Resources says a dam near the race's start is home to an endangered species of clam, and the DNR wants to protect the clam beds by diverting more water over the dam instead of into the mill race. Mill race supporters think that could lower the depth of the 8-foot deep canal. Dangerous, they say, to more than scenic beauty. The fire department uses the mill race as a backup water supply. Storm sewers drain into it, and the disposal plant takes water out to use in treatment.
It's going to cost them a lot more money to drain the race than it will be to save the race.
And it's going to cost the city some more. The DNR has ordered maintenance work down by the old mill stream.
They want all these trees along the bank cut down and a grassway put along the bank so that it could be mowed.
That would help secure the stream shoreline. Cost estimates have been as high as $1 million. As for whether there will be anything left for people like John Polka to enjoy, that's still a long way from being decided. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Broadhead.
The Rock River is a much bigger racetrack than the Broadhead Mill Race and a perfect location for my hometown show ski team called the Rock Aqua Jays. It had won 5 consecutive national titles as it prepared to host the national championships.
It might be the Nationals, but you could say Janesville dominates the event. The Rock Aqua Jays have won the title 7 times, including each of the last 5 years.
Single ski gainer!
With the Nationals on their own stretch of water this year, the Aqua Jays want to make it 6 in a row.
I think the way we're looking right now, it's pretty good. I hope we can pull it through, especially on our home site.
The Aqua Jays are sharing the water with 15 other teams, and today they put the finishing touches on the welcome mat. Welcoming not just skiers and spectators, but national TV.
Very popular show. ESPN has a tendency to like that type of thing. Show skiing is a very popular event.
The Janesville Chamber of Commerce says it's impossible to buy this kind of publicity, and more than 30,000 are expected to watch the ski shows in person, spending $650,000 while they're here.
We have the Rock Aqua Jays to thank for it. We wouldn't have all this people, we wouldn't have all this income coming into the city if we...
Triple helicopter spin!
And like the Aqua Jays' 26-person 4-high pyramid, the ski excitement should build all weekend. The home team is the final performer on Sunday afternoon, a performance it'll use to defend its title. Janesville wants to repeat as well. It's already asked to host the Nationals in 1991. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Janesville.
In addition to hosting spectator sports, water serves as valuable habitat for fish and other wildlife. Water has always been a highway. Nearly 20 years after Lewis and Clark traveled up the Missouri River, another expedition left St. Louis, which established the fur trade by European Americans and the long-term settlement of the western half of the United States. A group of hardy adventurers set out to recreate an 1825 trip, starting in the mountains of Wyoming and traveling downstream to St. Louis by way of the Big Muddy. It was part of a multi-state centennial celebration.
Our research showed us that there were 4 major events in Western American history that account for the size and shape and even the character of our country. And those 4 events, not in chronological order, was the Texas invasion by the Americans. You know, they were infatuated by the place. They'd go down there, get beat up, thrown out, and they'd go right back in. Another one was Lewis and Clark, of course. That told the world we were interested in an ocean continent, our country. The third one was Becknell in 1821. He established a route to Santa Fe. A year later, in 1822, a man by the name of Daniel William Ashley concocted a whole new enterprise in the fur trade business. And so he advertised in St. Louis and got 125 men to come with him to the west. And of those 4 events I just mentioned, William Ashley, historians will generally agree, and the Ashley adventure was probably the most important because him and his men, they established 2 sides to the Rocky Mountains. They were the first over South Pass. I'm talking about European Americans. They were first to find the Great Salt Lake, and they were the first to go overland all the way to California, plus a number of other things. We're calling Ashley the father of the American West, and so the whole high point of his adventures in the West was when he called a rendezvous at the Henry's Fork of the Green River in 1825. Gathered up his prize of furs and headed to St. Louis. And that's what we're doing. We spent 2 years trapping beaver, and we went down to Henry's Fork. We had 13 mountain men and women, 23 horses, and we came overland 350 miles in about 13 days. Then we took the 100 pounds of beaver that we had with us, loaded it into this boat here, and a crew of 6 got in the boat and are now propelling it 2,600 miles to St. Louis.
Alan Mabey is the captain of the crew and represents Idaho on the Centennial Journey. Each crew member represents a state celebrating its 100th birthday this year or next year. Roger Melton carries the Wyoming flag, Rita Healy represents Montana, Wayne Montgomery for North Dakota, Bill Sayer for the state of Washington, and Rapid City native Shauna Lolomia is South Dakota's representative.
My official role is the photographer. I'm cut a little slack to do that job. We did a tremendous portage a couple days back, and the crew was really good about allowing me to not carry so much and take pictures. When I'm not taking pictures, I help with the tent, and I help Rita with doing dishes now and then. It was a tremendous challenge to it. I wanted to see if I could do the challenge.
How are you holding up?
Pretty well, pretty well.
The canoe carries everything, their tent, the beaver pelts they're transporting, and all supplies. But bowman Bill Sayer says the portages over dry land aren't as tough as you'd think.
They're not the toughest part. They're a break in the monotony of just paddling. It gives us a chance to exercise the lower half of the body and do some walking instead of all the paddling.
You're in a canoe working very hard for 10 hours a day, but it becomes a way of life. You know, we don't worry about the time really. We usually don't know even what day it is. Generally we know the date, but not usually the day or the hour. So it's just we're down to the very basics. You know, sleeping and working.
The country has changed as we've come. Well, we went way north, almost to the Canadian border, and then had to turn south as the river came. So we've got to see a lot of different country, a lot of wildlife. But the people, I think, have been what's been the most memorable experience for me.
Do a lot of comparison of what might have been then and how it is now. And like in North Dakota, for example, we would be canoeing past a huge power plant. And it's hard to imagine what Ashley would have thought if he came by this tremendous structure that you can hear humming for miles. I compare the old and the new a lot. In the headwaters of Sakakawea and Oahe, you're reminded a lot of what the land might have been like before. And there was a kind of a humbling feeling there when you went through the submerged forests. A lot of respect.
Most certainly a once-in-a-lifetime adventure, and it's going to be one of those things that you'll be able to tell your grandchildren about and all of those good kinds of things. So it's definitely something that you can write home to the folks about.
The last time traders followed this route was 164 years ago. Mabey and his crew plan to reach St. Louis in early August and sell the beaver pelts they trapped last summer and have spent this summer carrying over 2,600 miles.
There are furriers down there that will buy, and but we don't want them to go in the hands of commercial people. We want to get them into the hands of the general public. So we're going to sell them when we get down there to the general public.
The Voyager canoe is authentic to its 1825 time period, right down to the 24-star flag. It's called the Centennial Messenger. The message it's carrying, don't forget.
We believe that, and again our research is showing that anytime a great nation declines, these great nations generally have one thing in common, and that is they have forgotten their roots. They forget where they come from. And this project is to keep a reminder there in front of people of their western roots.
After paddling their way down the Missouri, it's certain this crew will never forget its journey back to the beginning. I'm Dave Mossner reporting for 30.
That's it for this edition of Vintage Video in the Water. I'm David Mossner. See you next time.